everyone. A very warm welcome to the OER webinar on business transformation for the new reality. Today, we are joined with guests from Oman, the GCC markets, UK, US, Egypt, and some parts of Europe. The webinar is organized in partnership with the Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and I would like to thank His Excellency Qais Mohammed Al Yusuf for enabling this partnership. I would also like to thank our other partners, Oman Arab Bank, Octal, Oman Data Park, and National Life and General Insurance. The COVID-19 crisis and the response to it continues to evolve. The social and economic impact of the novel coronavirus has reverberated from every corner of the globe. As per a University of Cambridge report, which was recently published by the World Economic Forum, over the coming 5 years, the global economy could take a massive hit of $26.8 trillion in a consensus projection, with the potential of going up to a staggering $82 trillion in a worst-case scenario. Unfortunately, Oman has been further hit very hard by the drastic drop in the oil price. However, like many other parts of the world, the economies are limping back to normalcy. Oman is also moving from resilience to return mode. The business owners and corporate executives in the Sultanate across sectors are facing the challenge of surviving the economic slump and getting back to business amidst deep uncertainty about the new normal. Under this backdrop, in today's webinar, our distinguished speakers will share their thoughts, experiences, and learnings to navigate through the crisis and simultaneously rebuild the businesses that serve the society, are based on innovation, are sustainable, and growth-oriented. I'm sure all of you are looking forward to an enlivening discussion, and so am I. So without taking more time, let me invite my colleague and the moderator for today's webinar, Mayank Singh, Group Editor of OER and BusinessLiveMiddleEast.com, to take the discussions forward. Thank you and have a good session ahead.
Thank you, Alpina. The topic of today's webinar is business transformation for the new reality. And we have a power-packed panel to discuss the issues at hand. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency Qais Mohammed Al Yusuf, who's the Chairman of the Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry. His Excellency is also the Deputy Chairman of the Public Authority of Manpower Register and a member of the Public Authority for SME Development, or RIADA. Welcome, Your Excellency. Our next speaker is Mr. Samir J. Fancy, Chairman and founder of Renaissance Services and the Tawus Group, which is the leading Omani conglomerate. He also has a financial background with over 30 years of directorship experience covering a range of sectors. Welcome, Mr. Samir Fancy. Our next guest is Dr. Amir Al Rawaz, who's a highly experienced transformation thought leader with a specialization in technology and innovation. He's also currently the chairman of the Oman Society for Petroleum Services. Welcome, Dr. Amir Al Rawaz. Our next speaker is Mr. Nabil Jawad Sultan, who's the founder and chairman of Nabe.com, a global e-commerce platform. He also serves as the director of the Jawad Sultan Group. And welcome, Mr. Nabil Sultan. And our final speaker is Mr. Maqbool Al Wahebi, CEO of Oman Data Park, the first managed and cloud service provider in Oman. Mr. Maqbool has been instrumental in developing customized solutions for multiple sectors. Welcome, Mr. Maqbool Al Wahebi, and a very warm welcome to all the panelists today. Before we proceed, I would like to highlight a few procedural points. We will be taking audience questions towards the end of today's session. So please type your questions in the panel below with your name and designation. During the course of the discussion, we will be putting up a couple of audience questions for polling. So please do participate with your response. And finally, today's webinar is also live on YouTube to reach a much larger audience. And just to begin and to contextualize today's webinar, let me show you 5 figures. 5 figures which illustrate why the world is going through what is being called a global crisis like none other. This is a global crisis like none other, and please keep this in mind because we'll be cross-referencing this as we go ahead. As per the WHO, or the World Health Organization, the number of COVID-19 cases worldwide stood at over 6 million with 371,000 deaths on 1st June 2020, and we don't know where this is going. Secondly, what makes this crisis different from the Great Depression and other recessions is that it needs to be resolved by both public health measures and economic policies. For oil exporting country, it's been a double whammy. And according to the OPEC, has predicted that global oil demand will fall by over 9 million barrels per day in 2020 compared to last year. And there is more bad news coming. The Asian Development Bank estimates that the global economy will suffer losses of up to $8.8 trillion in 2020. And this is close to the combined GDPs of Japan and Germany put together. Same for global merchandise trade, which is expected to reduce by almost a third or 32% according to the World Trade Organization. And finally, around 1.6 billion people employed in the informal economy, or nearly half of the global workforce, is likely to lose livelihoods according to the International Labour Organization. So if you're looking for a silver lining, there is no silver lining on the horizon as of now. And on that note, I would like to invite His Excellency Qais Al Yusuf to make a brief presentation and set the stage for today's discussion. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Mayank. It's a great honor and privilege to be in this OER and Business Live Middle East seminar or webinar. This is a new reality, I guess, for all of us. So it's a good honor to have this today's session in partnership as well with Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and with such distinguished speakers as well. If you allow me, Mayank, I have a short presentation, so I will move to it. Please let me know when it comes on the screen.
Yes, please.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's on. Your Excellency, you can proceed. The first slide can be seen.
So please let me know when about timing,
Yeah,
so
sure.
that I manage your time.
Yes.
So today, the presentation covers economic effects. You have mentioned some of these figures, features of the Omani economy, some recommendations that the Oman Chamber of Commerce have raised to the government authorities about economic stimulus required, innovation in COVID-19, and OCCI's role in facing the effects of the spread of COVID-19. So the economic effects on the world, of course, you have mentioned some of them. The fall of the global stock market, we see how the impact, this is only till April, we have seen the different various indices in the world have taken a huge hit since the beginning of the pandemic. Again, the oil prices, we have seen a very, very unique situation that we have not seen in the last 2 decades at least, where Oman is relying heavily on oil for our economy. Then, as you mentioned, there are big impacts on people, and some of the numbers you have mentioned are confirmed here, that this pandemic is affecting close to 2.7 billion workers, or 1.6 billion, as you mentioned, affecting the unorganized or informal trade, as they call it, people who rely on hourly basis or working in the informal economy. And these all will be impacted because their livelihood is directly impacted because of the pandemic. And naturally, developing countries are expected to suffer the most. And our point today is, if there'll be more employment, if businesses do not recover. So these two are linked. So we have to help the businesses if we want to help the overall economy and the unemployment. Therefore, as per the ADB, we expect $8.8 trillion to be lost. I lost my screen. Can you see the screen, or?
We can see it, Your Excellency.
Okay, so as we mentioned, the Asian Development Bank, approximately 8.8 trillion of the world economic output might reduce. It's about 10% of the world GDP. IMF warns that this is the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, decline in global economy by 3%. And of course, with the global lockdown, the producing countries have been unable to meet the demands of their international clients. And the important note here is that the recovery will take time. The recovery is expected to be partial in 2021. So we should not expect that only with the lifting of the lockdown that we will suddenly see a recovery take place, but it will take some time for the recovery to take place. In terms of for Oman, what does it mean on macro and micro basis? On the macro basis, we all remember that the total expenditure is about 13.2 billion Omani riyals, government expenditure. We have total government revenues of about 10.7, and then we have the deficit of 2.5 billion riyals. This was announced at the beginning of the year. Now, the biggest factor, of course, was the oil prices, because it's the biggest variable in the budget. Now we have a double hit. On one hand, we have the COVID, and as a related to it was the double hit of the crude oil prices going down. Alhamdulillah, over the last couple of days, the oil prices have recovered, and we hope that they will continue remaining that way, because our budget is based on $58. So we hope that on average the price will be very close to that. And but nevertheless, this reduction in prices will impact the economy. Our MSM has taken a hit again. We see that MSM index during the last week of May declined by almost 14%. And this has impact not only on businesses, but also on the loans, because a lot of these shares are mortgaged against bank loans. So the impact on the economy of the pandemic, we have a lockdown phase, which we expect March to June. As I have mentioned this, that businesses have to expect that the lockdown should be till mid-June. And I hope that within a couple of days, within next week, maybe we'll see some easing and some more businesses will be open. They will be partial opening, but with social distancing, because as point 3 mentions, until there's a vaccine or treatment, we will have to maintain the new reality. And that's because to safeguard safeguard our health and our lives, which is equally important, and the lives of our employees. So therefore, the recovery will take not less than 18 to 24 months, according to experts. So this impact on Oman will be decreased public spending, because as we have seen with the reduction in oil prices and the pressure on the budget, there'll be reduction in public spending. Some of these have been announced, and this has been the main driver of the economy. And the private sector is linked to the government spending. So this will have an impact on the private sector growth. There'll be an impact on consumer behavior. People will always, because of their fear, they might prefer to spend less. And what we have noticed that there are, because of the global supply chain interruptions, companies will have to think twice about their supply chain, and companies that are reliant on exports will have to think of new ways of doing business. But there's an opportunity, of course, in all this, which will come back. So the future of the Omani economy, what I want to highlight here, there's a need to strengthen direct imports through local ports and to promote exports of Omani products. That's number 3. We have to improve the business environment and decreasing bureaucracy to the minimum. Number 5, we have to support the small, medium enterprises and promote in-country value. And 6, we have to work together to promote investments, because Oman still has a number of benefits and a number of incentives that we will touch upon later on. In terms of micro, the economic sectors we all know, but the economic sectors that were affected were, as you can see in the slide, conferences, MICE, hotels and hospitality, education and training, travel and tourism, MSM, retail services, manufacturing, real estate, and construction. Now, what we see that on the micro basis, the companies as a whole, not only SMEs, but companies at large are impacted. Why they're impacted? Because while the revenues have been reducing and have reduced because of the lockdown and the economic slowdown, and because of the global lockdown, so even supply chain have been interrupted, revenue has gone down where expenses have been fixed, especially the monthly expenses from salaries and wages and insurance and rents and electricity, water, and service. At the same time, a lot of businesses rely on bank borrowings to support their growth. And the value of these collaterals, so whether it is bonds, shares, or real estate, has gone down. So there is the businesses, they need some support in these difficult times. A lot of people always argue saying, how come businesses that have been established for decades are not able to sustain only 2 months of lockdown? I think the issue, which is more important to note, is it's not a matter of assets. These companies might have assets, but the issue is of cash flow and managing cash in these difficult times, and how to get cash to finance these difficult times. We will get out of it. The resilience is there. Companies which are strong and long been there, they need some support. They need some ways of managing, but it's not a matter of not having assets. It's a matter of managing their cash flow and getting the cash to bridge these difficult times. So we have, as OCCI, raised a number of suggestions to the government, and we have been in close contact with the government over the past few weeks, over the last 2 months, to be specific. We always look at what other governments and what other economies have been doing as a guidelines. But we have raised our own sort of requirements, and we have clubbed these as urgent actions, medium term and long term. As you have seen, some of these, the government have been very quick and they have been very responsive to us, alhamdulillah, and a number of stimulus packages and have been issued over the last, in the month of April especially. And we are still hoping for more, like the postponing of monthly installments for sectors that have been affected, reschedulement of loans without asking for additional collateral. This is something we still are asking for, because rescheduling the loans without asking for collaterals while the value of the collaterals have dropped. And we also requesting the central bank to not require local banks to make additional provisions, because banks also then don't have incentives to do it.
Apologies, if you can wrap up, please, in 1 minute.
Yes.
Sorry.
I will need just 2 minutes then. That
allowing
companies to take additional loans, emergency loans. In terms of other requests, we asked tenants to reduce the rent as much as possible. We have requested for tourism to be exempted. In terms of labor market, you have seen some of the labor market regulations that have come luckily from the government, and these have been good for now. Supporting SMEs, we are always looking for how can the government should pay the dues to the government companies, and this has been doing well. Government has been responsive here. How can you exempt enterprises holding Riyada card? These are Armanis managing their own companies from the income tax for the year 2020, postponing again for them bank installments or giving them emergency loans. As we said, cash flow is the issue, and that's why providing them with emergency loans. About procedures which is medium term, I only wanted to say about the banks. We're looking at share value and land value falling. We're requesting banks to be more flexible and not asking for the value of these to be made good, but to go back to the value of 2019 and then make good anything which requires to be between the value of today and the value of 2019 after 1 or 2 years. More things we have asked for is revising the method of calculating the electricity tariffs on commercial establishment to what they were in 2016, just to incentivize business. On the long term, we asked for value-added tax if it can be reduced, if it can be changed rather than value-added tax, if it can be expand the concept of luxury tax rather than value-added tax. And we were hoping that the incentives that CBO has provided incentives worth $20 billion. We hope that these incentives will continue to be there and available to local banks till the end of 2021 at least, or 2022, to help the businesses. Here, I will not go more. Innovation and COVID. Of course, innovation is very important to the business, and I think it has forced many companies to go and innovate. And in Oman, we have been really prepared before the COVID for 4IR, or Fourth Industrial Revolution. And you can see in different aspects of where 4IR, where we can see companies like Oman Data Park that are today, maybe you speak to us about the funding available. You can see all this funding from on the left-hand side corner of the presentation, some funding government agencies and other private institutions providing funding to support SMEs. Also, what we have seen with innovative projects, beautiful projects have come up with these difficult challenges. We have seen companies using 3D to provide medical supplies, and these are some SMEs that have been using small factories to use these medical equipment, which have been approved by the Ministry of Health. We have seen how drones and Muscat municipality have been using sterilization and disinfection using drones by ROP. Some of you who like to take a walk in Shat al-Forum must have seen these drones warn us and asking us to go home. And we also see that how we can use drones to measure human temperature. The Supreme Committee are using COVID electronic platforms to monitor people. Royal Hospital launched a virtual clinic. So all these are really things which we see are happening. In terms of shop from your home initiatives, Bahar for the wholesale purchase, Ithmar, we have Muawna, we have Mandoob, and Protec, which is also for helping maintenance by the application, Mandoob, Markitex, Drewel, Nabe, by which today we have Mr. Nabil with us about e-commerce platforms. All these have been before the pandemic, but they will make the place even better. We, as an OCCI, have Innovation Award to help this. I have more slides, but I'll stop here. I think the future is positive. I think with the issuance of the royal decrees in 2019, with the partnership, public sector and private sector, with the law of foreign capital law, with the bankruptcy law, with the establishment of the arbitration center by the OCCI, I think all these are good ways of starting, because Oman does have world-class infrastructure. It has investor-friendly legislation. It now is allowed 400% ownership is allowed. We have local talent. I think with the economic situation, the government will be turning more and more into PPP, private-public partnership-based projects, because when the government is changing its model from contracting, whereby you build for me, into come and share the risk with me and I'll give you some guarantees. This is a beautiful model for serious investors. And also one lesson from COVID is we learned that the world, regardless of how well connected we are, there might come some times that we will have to enhance local production and services and focus on ICV. And we have a member of a couple of committees for ICV, and I know there are at least 16 new projects within the healthcare sector and within the utility sectors, that if a serious investor is willing to invest, through Oman Chamber of Commerce, through ITRA, we can direct them to the right projects at the right return. Of course, I will not go to the OCC role. I have a couple of slides here about establishment and what does the chamber do. And we formed the Corporate Social Responsibility Fund, and of course we care about the employees and health and safety of the employees in private sector. And finally, I want to end up with saying a big thank you for the cooperation that we have got with His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq's government and the Supreme Committee. And we would like to, on behalf of all of us, to say thank you to the frontliners, the health workers and the security officers for really taking the biggest sort of burden at this place. Sorry for taking so long. Thank you very much. I'll stop the slide.
Thank you, Your Excellency. This was just brilliant. I guess you have already answered so many questions that we have, and we'll keep on cross-referencing. Dr. Awaz, what are the main challenges that are facing businesses in Oman, and what can be done? Dr. Awaz, I mean, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. To be put simply, businesses have had to pay out fixed expenses for a few months now, right, without having a matching income to pay for those expenses. And businesses that do not have a deeper pocket or other sources of income have had to basically pay out and empty the purse, so to speak. Also, a lot of these businesses have had to render essential services with a minimum number of their resources, particularly human resources at operation, because of the restrictions. So some of them had to render services at 30% of the staff. These are the main challenges. I don't want to dwell into very specific businesses, but all businesses have impacted mainly by cash flow, but also by decline in business. And the threat is that a lot of the habits can change in such a long time. So a lot of their habitual customers may not come to them after the crisis, and they worry that people will embrace new habits and perhaps make do without their products and services and not anymore come back to them. So the crisis is not only the current, but also bracing themselves for the future.
So what can be done?
Well, there are many things that need to be done at many levels. For example, on the trust and regaining confidence of customers, leaders would need to work on rebuilding trust. Leaders will also need to rebuild the trust internally first with their staff and resources. They would also need to come up with promotions and attractive offers to offset any habitual change or any consumer confidence that's lost over time. So those attractive offers might bring people in, and then they will have to build in some stickiness factors, because whatever stickiness factors they've built in the past have probably gone over this extended period. And they will need to build new stickiness factors. They would need to build new affinity with their customer base as well as with their suppliers. Leaders need to regain confidence with their employees, their investors, their suppliers, and the community at large. The community would be concerned if you start operating unsafely and then spreading the disease over again. So a lot of rebuilding of trust will be required.
Absolutely. Point taken. Mr. Fancy, what has been said by His Excellency and Dr. Abbas applies to your group. You are into, you're servicing other institutions, and some of them have been shut down. So that has affected your cash flow and your companies. How are you negotiating this?
So look, it's all everything step by step. If you look out on my left-hand side, the way we're seeing the debate is one of lives and livelihoods. So the delta between the two is time. If it takes too long for us to safely get back to work, the issues fuse together. So you lose on both ends, both lives, and you crush livelihoods. When we're talking about the transformation and things people have to do, it really gets to technology, data management, digitalization, AI, automation. But the first step is to take care of your people. What has happened so far in Oman is we've been led by the science. I think His Excellency, the Health Minister, Dr. Saidi, has done a fantastic job. The idea was to flatten the curve, take care of our health services, but the virus still remains, and we've got to get back to work. So we have to operate in a new paradigm. In the new normal, companies need to be ready with their protocols and enforce these. That is the challenge. Government needs to issue crystal clear back to work policy with consequences for transgressions. It is also about looking after your people. The sad statistic of the outbreak hotspots of COVID-19 tell us what we already know, that some companies still think it's okay to keep people in overcrowded, unsanitary, unacceptable living conditions. Can't happen anymore. We've got to become ILO, International Labor Organization compliant with space dimensions, decent meals, dignity for lifestyle, and medical care and community facilities. It all makes a lot of sense. There are many companies in Oman, like, for example, excellent examples would be PDO with their packs, Oman LNG with their housing complexes, Cesard with Renaissance Village, all understand that looking after people is affordable with proven benefits, better safety performance, lower downtime for sickness, lower attrition, greater attraction for Omani employees. And the one really good thing that I noted was the municipality minister, Dr. Zijdali, within his first 100 days, very early on, issued and publicized standards about caring for workforces. This was before the pandemic, and power to him for that.
Sure.
But unfortunately, not soon enough to have a paradigm shift. But that's really my take on this.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Mr. Fancy. Mr. Nabil, you have businesses that have also been impacted. Your group has interest in retail, which has really been suffered the brunt of it. What are you doing? How are you managing this whole downturn?
So this is where the transformation question actually comes in. And you see, when this pandemic happened, obviously we were not ready we had not transformed our companies into the new reality, new transformation. And then therefore we suffered immensely. We had seen 90 and 95% drop in our revenues. And with existing fixed expenses and costs and everything else remained the same. And it's a very good lesson to learn from this. And then at the later stage, we started making it up and actually we started our online transformation. In a way, we started recently launched one of the companies started launching the e-commerce platform, and also started communicating with our customers through the very basic e-commerce measures, which is like WhatsApp and Instagram, which are not really made for e-commerce. They're social media stuff. This is for my family business. My other business, which is nabi.com, is a different story. That actually was, I mean, it's sad to say, but it benefit from this.
Right platform at the right time. Yes, sure. Okay, no, we'll come back and talk about in detail about nabi.com. I want to bring in Mr. Maqbool here. Is this an opportunity for companies like you? Why it's a crisis for others? Is this an opportunity for companies like you and other digital companies or who are in the technology space? Your Excellency, when we were speaking yesterday, you said that, as the lockdown gets lifted, there is a growing realization that it will take a while before this pandemic goes away. So, hence we have to fight it while learning to live with it. I mean, till a vaccine or a cure comes around. How does one strike that balance?
I think what Samir was saying, save lives while saving livelihood, is a great balance between the two, because economy is also important in saving livelihood. So the balance is health comes first, naturally. I think, like His Excellency the Minister of Health was saying in last week's statement, that when you open businesses, doesn't mean when businesses were closed doesn't mean the cases were not happening. Cases were still happening, and people were still getting infected. So I think that's one balance. That if we open the economy, open the businesses while making a tight guidelines on how to actually have the precautionary measures in place, how people should be behaving. It's the new reality, and this is the today's title is how to live with it. We have to live with it for a long time, maybe for another year, and using other platforms, using such as these even for businesses, using technology and using platforms to meet rather than meeting online. Whenever you can avoid meeting in a big gathering, we should use it. But I think the balance of economic activity has to be allowed. I think all businesses, at least even the businesses that have high risk, except where they need interaction, if they're not allowed to open shops, at least they have to be allowed, without exception, to sell online and to act online. And this is maybe how we can support maybe some SMEs to teach them or provide them with tools so they can sell online. I was impressed by one SME who has created for the first time an exhibition online exhibition. So she actually it was a 10-day period, and she asked every person to subscribe by 10 reals, and she put the companies within. It's like a booth. So you go to that page of every company, and they help them build that page on Instagram and link to them. So people are finding ways of doing business, and this is what the government should enhance, and even the chamber should promote and help these businesses come and start working, because it's more worrisome if you stop the business, because then the issues will be even larger. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Fancy, you heard Your Excellency saying that.
I'm available, Mayank. I'm sorry.
No problem. We'll just come to you, Mr. Maqbool. Just one moment. Good to see you. Welcome to this debate. We missed you. Mr. Fancy, you heard that businesses should go digital. Now, you are into facilities management. You provide a lot of manpower to other companies. How are you going to negotiate this, lives versus livelihood, with a huge manpower?
So actually, we've never stopped working. We work alongside the Ministry of Health. We're taking care of all the hospitals in Oman. And we've, mashallah, because of the protocols we employed, have been able to do so successfully and safely to the largest extent. But for me, beyond this, the real issue is going to be about in the new paradigm. You have to move to tech. You have to move to digitalization. This piece is a change or die scenario. We'll need to reduce our costs, but this should be a collaborative effort at all levels in your company and in the economy. We need to start taking care of and training our people. Then it's about efficiency. What is the cheapest, fastest, safest, greenest, and most efficient way of doing business? We need to organize our people, adopt, adapt the best practices, and this will rule the new order of life. I don't see a quick recovery happening. Recovery requires systemic change. 2020 plan for private sector should be to adapt and survive. 2021 should be excel, grow, and thrive. Many things that we did before will go online. Business models will need to change. Necessity is the mother of invention. And we'll find our way and be assured no one is alone on this. The
Okay.
case studies, analogies, and contextualization is out there online. If you're prepared to change, you'll find it. And the companies with large workforces will need to change the way on how they care for their employees and train them in this post period. And the last point that I saw, which concerns me, is that there's been big pressure from some large institutions and semi-government institutions who have started just trying to say, you've got to cut down and just reduce your contracts while in contract. They need, and they're giving numbers like 20, 30%. This doesn't work. It's counterintuitive because if any company in Oman is forced to just reduce contract revenue without reducing costs, they'll go down. And if they reduce costs, where will they do it? They'll take it from the SMEs who work at one level down. And this starts a downward spiral because everyone in the country is damaged by this event, government and private sector. We have to work collaboratively. We have to agree, reduce service, take the full benefit of the cost. But it has to be a collaboration like never before.
Sure. Point taken. Mr. Maqbool, if you can have you back here. Two questions. One is, is this an opportunity for digital and technology-led companies like yours? And how do you go back when you have to open and live this pandemic?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm sorry I mean, technology was against me this time, and I have to move into Plan B, and I ended up in Plan C now.
Yeah. Okay.
So excuse me for that. Basically, you have a very good, interesting question regarding technology and how technology are actually bypassing this pandemic, and we can see globally, starting from US, Europe, Asia, and ourselves, how technology have managed to maneuver around this pandemic, not only to serve their own corporates, but then to serve across different economical pillars and diversified, let's say, sectors that we have. So technology today is proven to be a good enabler for different sectors across the market. And in some way, it managed to lift up those sectors beautifully to some extent in order to reduce basically their loss in revenue and their operation expenses issues that they have. But in some sectors, those sectors are still finding it a bit of a challenge, because some of the sectors are actually meant to be more human oriented. So humans has to be there, and basically they are now finding their way forward. In the technology, yes, the March was a bit of an effect. So globally, it has been it was a shock period for everybody. So there was a stabilization phase after that, slowly, and then I think we're coming back. Now, as an enabler, I think that's where different sectors across the market has to actually make use of technology in order to update and reinvent their business models around digitalization in order for them to minimize the impact as much as possible. I mean, there was beautiful examples across the world. 2 days back, I was listening to a CEO from United States was talking about how they are actually transforming their business, and they are into the sport business. So they have gyms, and then they invite people to come and do training. So what they've done right now, because of these social distances, because of the lockdown that everybody is suffering from, they've managed to jump into one of these platforms, digital platforms, in order to actually do an online training while people are actually staying at home. So in one way, trainers are being deployed to provide training sessions for their customers. Yes, it might not lift them up to where were they in 2019, but to some extent it allows them to maintain their customers in one way or another. So this is one of the examples actually, and how business model have been tweaked a little bit in order to minimize the impact. Of course, there are some others are still finding their way.
Sure. Small point taken, absolutely. Dr. Abbas, this is something that His Excellency touched on his presentation. Most companies, the cash flow has dried up, but you still have fixed costs. You have interests, you have manpower costs, you have rents, you have utility bills. How do you go back scaling up in the next 2 quarters? In the next 6 months, what can businesses do?
Yeah, let me just first congratulate my colleague Maqbool Wahibi for so eloquently demonstrating his business redundancy and business continuity, going from plan A to plan B and plan C. And that's something that businesses would have learned, that they would have needed to have business continuity mechanisms for a case like this. And obviously, you often design your business continuity based on your enterprise risk. And nobody predicted this kind of enterprise risk. But now that we have it, I think people will be prepared going forward. Now, in terms of the cash flow crisis and the outflows versus the inflows, this is compounded by the fact that our economy is primarily made of vertically integrated companies, where they do everything they need to fulfill the service or the product that they want internally. I think businesses would need to challenge their business models and go into unbundling their businesses and only stick to doing the core. They would need to decide what to own and what to outsource. They may also, in terms of the payroll, need to revise the relationship with their employees in a way that employees are paid for contribution rather than for hours served, which could not be served during such crisis. I think all these matters need to be addressed. Normally, you would need to transform or restructure at the good times. As they say, you know, the best time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining. But this time, we've had to fix the roof when it's raining. And therefore, a lot of businesses are now questioning their own business models. They're going to praise themselves into the shared economy. I think this coronavirus pandemic has actually accelerated the shift into the shared economy, where you won't have to do everything internally. You would outsource, you would share, and you would have people work for you to fulfill your service through freelancers. And if you look at also the supply chain, that's the one thing that failed. We didn't have supply chain resilience. And therefore, this is where the shared economy works, where your service is completed in the last mile by someone else that is affiliated to you rather than you. So all these models would need to be challenged and would need to be addressed with a view that is going to survive a shared economy.
Very quickly, do you see that realization coming when you speak to your clients, you speak to your colleagues from the industry? Are they aware of this, that they need to change, or they need?
Yes. There are clients that I have and coaches that I talk to who are considering looking at what do they need to keep, what was essential, what was it that they could live without over this time, and they're now questioning: do I need to insource it, or should I outsource it? Do I need to basically buy it as a service, or hire someone full-time for it.
Sure.
So
Okay.
pay for contribution is something that's going to take a long time. And I suggest taking time, because the last thing we want is to see people being laid off right after the crisis. However, as Mr. Samir said, the next 6 months are going to be the survival and the shift of paradigm into the new norms. And after that, we're going to see these kind of new paradigms put in place, and will probably be able to absorb the impact slowly
Sure.
and gradually.
Okay, well, Mr. Dabil, you heard a lot of points saying digitalization this year is about survival. What can businesses do in the next 6 months?
It's. I think the main question is: are you going to transfer your business or not? It is becoming. I think COVID-19 has nature has given us a simulation of what will happen to your business if you don't transform. And today, everybody suffered from zero revenues and less 90% revenues. But very soon, it's going to be only your business that will suffer 90% reduction in revenues if you don't transform. And so I think it was given to us this as a gift to let's do it, go and transform your business. Now, unfortunately, a lot of business are trying to are going through transformation, but they're thinking this is transformation. This is actually not transformation. What they're trying to do is to integrate few technologies in their businesses, thinking that this is transformation. Where in reality, the transformation is nothing but an entire ecosystem is changed. This is no longer the same business environment that you live or you used to live on. This is a different, completely different. So, and instead of taking few technologies and integrate them in your business, you need to take your business and put it on the ecosystem, on the new ecosystem. If you might be, your business might be completely rejected by this ecosystem. So are you going to kill that business? Is this an issue with your industry? Is this an issue with your product? Or you can actually survive this transformation. You transform your business, but integrate every single aspect of the transformation in terms of the culture change, in terms of the technology change, in terms of the work environment, everything that has to be changed. And then, so the next 6 months to 1 year, all what you need to do is think about that, rather than, okay, I understand you need to improve your cash flows and all these immediate and urgent things that we need to do. But transformation is imminent. It's not going to wait for you. Sooner or later, you're going to be living a personalized COVID-19. It's going to be COVID-20, COVID-21, but it's going to be very personal to you.
Sure.
And I think people really have to think about transformation.
No.
Not just integrating few technologies into their business.
Absolutely. You said it, a wonderful point. Probably people are missing the trees for the woods. I mean, really, businesses need to think. Can you have the first audience poll question, please? Can we have the first audience poll question, please? Okay, this is, can all of you please type your replies? Can businesses in Oman transform themselves innovatively in the next 6 months? Can businesses in Oman transform themselves innovatively in the next 6 months? And here we have the results. And okay, most people seem to be thinking that we can. I think that seems to be there. And I want to move on with Your Excellency. Your Excellency, while large companies may survive, SMEs are the ones who are most vulnerable economically. Now, what measures are being taken by OCCI to support them? Yeah, here we have the results. Your Excellency just told us 70% think, which is a great thing. They think that they can transform, which is great. 30% think they're not. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm really happy to note that. I mean, people are positive and optimistic, and I love this attitude. I think this is what makes Oman strong, by us all collectively being positive and looking at it and with this attitude, which will make us survive. Half of it is about attitude and how to resolve it. SMEs, I think, as I mentioned, we need to support them largely. We really need to stand by them. We need to see how the support we can give between, of course, between the Chamber of Commerce, between Riyadh, raising their concerns in one voice to the authorities. We should, in one hand, as if landlords can help them with the lease or relaxing of lease, and we have seen a lot of businesses, large businesses, landlords have been very generous, and they have allowed small businesses not to pay rent, and we have seen them not paying rent in big malls. So this has been, we have asked them, we wrote letters, and they have, the large companies have been very kind to support the small, medium enterprises. Number two, there have been some measures already taken by the government, like a deferment of loans for the sectors that are affected, allowing them to defer their social contribution, allowing them to defer the tax. I think this is all there, allowing them, if they're in the hospitality sector, to waive their the taxes from there. What we need more, I think, number one is opening the business. I think we need to support them in opening their businesses. A lot of them have left work and maybe taken a loan to start a business. They have had that entrepreneurial spirit. We need to support them. We need to open their businesses. That's the first thing I think we should, and we are raising this, and I hope there'll be some positive news coming with that. And second of all, is to see how we can, even through banks, through SME institutions, Oman Development Bank, various profit and SME fund, see how we can provide them with emergency loans, because they will need loans. These businesses will later on hopefully come back to normal within 3-4 months. Once the business is back to normal, they will hopefully, we're optimistic. We have seen how some SMEs have taken the opportunity and used some of their products not meant for healthcare, but they have converted their production for medical supplies, using their 3D printers, which was meant for something else. This is really innovation at its best.
Sure, that's a great point. I want to start with Dr. Abbas. COVID-19 has led to large-scale disruption, and probably everyone has talked about it, saying that the tools and strategies of the past will not work in the future. Now, what are the 2-3 things can be done by companies in Oman to survive from here and probably grow in the future?
Yeah, I think after the survival, we would need to look at, as part of questioning your business model, you would need also to question the market size and the competitive scenario. And therefore, it might lead, I hope it will lead to mergers and acquisitions. We're probably the only economy that has sustained up to 6 years now. If you look at the decline of oil prices down to $26 starting the end of 2014 till today, we've sustained around 6 years of an economic decline, yet we haven't seen many or any mergers or acquisitions that are normally used in such conditions to consolidate strength, consolidate assets and cash flows, and also consolidate leadership and ease competitiveness and cutthroat pricing. This will be needed going forward. This is one. And then the other is unbundling businesses that for many years have survived on vertical integration and are now hurt, because a good business that is the core of the asset, for example, is then affected by all the peripheral businesses that built as a vertical integration to serve the core business. And those have to all be paid on the fixed cost when the core business is not performing. So this is an opportunity for us to look at those structures. Of course, at the national economy level, the government will need to ease and perhaps ease the pressure in terms of crowding out the private sector, allow more space for the private sector to enter into new sectors, because with the size of the economy, the private sector has primarily been taking a backseat, thriving on government projects, but not willing to compete with the government companies or state-owned enterprises when it comes to doing business with the public or even with the B2C. That will need to be addressed going forward. And I believe the government will see the opportunity to allow the private sector to take a front seat through divestments and through the ease on the crowding out that's been happening over the many years that's gone.
Sure. Mr. Maqbool? 2 or 3 things which can be done? 1 or 2 things at least?
In which regard, sorry?
Yeah, in sense of what can companies do to really survive in the next 6 months and probably grow from there?
I think we talked about trying to be innovative in coming up with new business models. That is something I think we are in agreement of. I don't have to repeat myself on there. But then one important aspect we have to have as a learning curve is the capital allocation aspect. And I think this is a direct message to CEOs, to top management. In 2016, like Dr. Amr has rightly mentioned, we had the hit on the oil. And that hit, some of us have actually learned a lot from. Unfortunately, some others have not. I'll be very frank. And the reason was that there was not enough attention to capital allocation. And this is something that you cannot delegate. A CEO cannot delegate this aspect. If you manage the capital allocation in terms of allocating your resources in one sense, in the right way, and allocating your spending in assets in another way, both of these aspects has to be really managed well. So before I answer directly your question, I want to actually analyze who are those guys who have managed to actually, let's say, move across these crises, be it in 2016, the oil crisis, and now the pandemic, are those guys who managed to actually manage this aspect of capital allocation. The second aspect is the cash flow, and that is where the balance sheets have to actually be a priority number one, not the income statement. And mistakenly, a lot of corporates focus more on their income statements rather than balance sheets. And when I say balance sheet, you actually have to have a proper balance between your assets and liabilities and cash flows. Those guys who have enough cash flow today are those guys who are winning. And that's why we are seeing large corporates across the world, like multinational companies who have managed to have a great cash flow reserve, can actually live to some extent for the next 6 to 8 months, or maybe a year, some of them. So capital allocation should be number one.
Sure.
Balance sheet, focus on balance sheet should be number two. Number three is the innovative aspects around coming up with a new business model and being agile enough to shift the corporate into adhering to these new business model, because every single day matters today. And I think there should be a quick, agile momentum within corporates themselves to be able to maneuver around these challenges.
Sure. Mr. Fancy, you heard the word agile. Mr. Maqbool just said cash flow, capital allocation, and being innovative. But so everyone agrees that businesses need to transform. But the kind of historic track record that businesses have had in Oman is they are very slow moving. Do you think that is going to change now?
Well, in Oman, it's a symbiotic relationship. I think private sector has been slow, and the government has also been very slow. And that actually is where life needs to change, because agility is going to be the key to survive, because the whole world has the same problem, and roughly in a way we'll start competing for the same thing. I think Maqbool's examples were excellent. I just want to quickly ask you, His Excellency touched on this in his slides, is when you want to do a transformation or a digital transformation, you'd normally look to your CEO, your CTO, but the answer is this time a little virus, an invisible virus, did this to us. I want to give you a real live example of how things are innovating. So would anyone believe that in December or January, all MSM companies will run their AGMs online with video conferencing, real-time voting? Actually, no one would believe me. And while the first attempt was not the best, they did it, and bravo to them. I mean, I cannot have enough respect for what they did. And what's going to happen in the future is yesterday, which we keep talking about normal, is not coming back. And that's what's really important to see, that it's already happening. And those who are not agile, who do not change, will not survive. Another big thing, very obvious, is that um, is your productivity being measured by your presence or your output? I know that during this crisis, our whole C-suite reflect that they've never worked harder. And I feel that for myself and down the line too. It's all about now putting in trust, because these are the building blocks to actually make the transformation. The world is connected, agility is a survival event, and in the next decade or two, over 90% of world trade will go online. Last anecdotal point I would make is a senior banker was sharing with me that the banks prepared so hard for this move to electronics. And this happened many years ago. And there were very few takers. People wanted to be in the old way of life. And then guess what? COVID-19 shows up, and with it, at a time when they have a paucity of resources because of rotation, there's a flood of companies now moving electronics. So at the moment, we're following the problem. Now we need to get ahead of it, and that's the message.
Sure. This is a question that I think all of you are going to like. Your Excellency, two questions. And what are the measures that the government can do to help private sector stimulate the economy? And how are you, as Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry, coordinating the efforts between the government and businesses?
I think in the slides, Mayank, I have highlighted some of the points we are raising to the government. And we have some of them have already, alhamdulillah, they have been implemented. The chamber is, we are the former representative of the private sector in Oman through establishment by royal decree in 1973. And we are members of various committees. And even in this crisis, there is an economic committee which is chaired by His Excellency, the Undersecretary of Commerce and Industry, where the chamber is also a member, and we try to always have a continuous dialogue with this committee, with the technical committee, which looks after the opening of businesses. We have had very good response from the government when the moment we called them, we had a meeting with 4 ministers responsible for the economic affairs of the country, where some of these ideas were shared with them, and they have some of them were received very well, as you have seen. And now I think through your forum as well, we're having great audience here. And I would like to not miss this opportunity. If any of the members hearing us today, if they have any other ideas other than what I have mentioned, if they think that from their experience can help the economy, 2, 3 ideas, please share them with us. That's why we're there. Write to me through you directly. They know how to reach me. They know how to reach my office, all online, of course. And I would love to hear these further thoughts. So we are close, we represent them, and we want to be the voice that we speak. The various points should come through one clear voice to the government.
So that's wonderful. I mean, so please, audience, anyone wants to reach His Excellency is available. Your Excellency, just a quick thing. What do you want the government to do? What do businesses want from the government now?
Easing is first of all, as I have mentioned, there are, in terms of some easing, some economic stimulus will be required. Okay. For example, making businesses, business environment, looking at the business environment, see how the business process can be shortened. If, for example, you require 10 steps to form a business, how can this be reduced to 7? How can we make it faster to get the permissions for some difficult industries to be established? Already we have learned through this, we have learned that Oman is resilient. You know, people to have the challenge of the whole government or the whole country facing lockdown, and also having the lockdown from our neighbors and having the supply chain interruptions. We have proved as Oman and as a private business in Oman, we have to be proud that we have proved that we are resilient and we can manage. We are now 3 months, and our groceries and shops have uninterrupted supply, alhamdulillah, and our life is going on. Really, we have not, and this is all goes to the coordination that is going on. So I think some more looking at the business processes and how can we look at the business environment, and that sort of support we need more focus, and supporting, of course, the SMEs. Maybe also ICV. ICV is an important file we have to look for. How can we enhance in-country value? What sort of projects that can be looked at? How can we, and this ICV does not mean only Omanis, because companies from international can come and form alliances and form businesses here, and this will be also an ICV. How can we have this economy flourish? There are so many things going for us with the incentives going on, and with the availability of talent and all the other things that I have mentioned.
No, His Excellency has said that everyone can reach him out with ideas, opinions. I'm giving everyone a chance. If you were to give a wish list to His Excellency that he could take to the government, what would it be, Nabil?
Okay, my list is in two forms. One is a soft list and one is a hard list.
Okay.
The soft one is the government really has to look at the economy as a focal point. Not everything else is the focal point other than the economy. I understand that the government historically has been relying on oil revenues, and the private sector is not a big contributor to the government income. Nevertheless, economy must be the focal point for anything to advance or go forward in this country. Every economy, every country you look at is the focal point is economy. Donald Trump flies from Washington to Saudi Arabia to make a deal for a business. Why? Because it's going to eventually improve the economy, employ people at whatever company that he is trying to make a deal for. The second thing is the manpower rules. All the rules and regulations that we have to come up. We still live in the old economy, the economy of 70s and 80s. We have not changed our rules and regulations. This is 2020. It has to be the nature to give you the message, stop it. You change your rules and regulations. We've been talking about Omanization for 35 years. Still, execution of Omanization is a mess. It's a failed execution of these policies and regulations. The diversification, what did we diversify? It's still dependent on the oil and gas. 35 years.
I can hear Mayank, but not
Nabil. Nabil, yeah, we lost the voice, but yeah, Mr. Maqbool, if you could go ahead. I mean, you can add to him if you have a wish list.
Yeah, sure, we can do that. I mean, I cannot agree more with Nabil. I think it's, Oman have done a great job, to be honest with you, in the past, since 1970 till now, in building its infrastructure. So we've consumed a lot of cash. We've done great projects, be it in transportation, roads, constructing the best ports in Oman. And I think it's time now to basically move into what we call an economy-based strategy. So with that, you need to actually review what we have right now and see what are those fundamentals that can be in place in order for an economy to move forward. So the basis would be oil is not first anymore. It should be the 2040 diversified pillars that have been stated by the government, I think 1 or 2 years back. We have logistics, we have great ports, we have fisheries, we have to open up again for tourism, and we need to actually leapfrog in the technology space. We're having 5G coming. We have a great fourth industrial revolution kind of components coming up with the 5G, that a lot of these venture can be formed in an SME way. So there is a rich kind of a green field we have right now. But then as Nabil have rightly said, all the plans has to be driven by the economy-based strategy.
Sure. A quick word, Mr. Fancy. Mr. Nabil had very strong opinions. Do you agree with those, or you have something else to say?
No, I think Nabil expressed them perfectly well, and they're on the button. But while we also have to recognize that at the moment there's a triple whammy of oil price, virus, and a serial budget deficit already there. So for me, the big things would be really meaningful employment reform, the right to hire and fire, educate that workforce, put away the rules or put in the rules, stop the sense of entitlement, get the workforce working. The workplace needs to get more competitive, read efficient. If government wants to slimline their own workforce, then pass on their employees into the private sector. I'm giving a crazy out of the box idea. Use the salaries you would have been paying for a meaningful period as an incentive to private sector to hire, change the balance, because at the end of the day, whatever the situation between government and private sector today, this is our country together. And only through collaboration are the right results going to come. And frankly, we have the best representative for for the private sector in His Excellency Qais Al Yusuf, who is open, available, capable to actually represent us and help this happen with government. But legislation from them is the key.
Sure. Dr. Abbas, you heard a lot of opinions. Yeah, please, if you could add on to that. Please.
Yeah, maybe instead of adding more to the list, allow me to build on what Mrs. Samir is saying, and also link it to the wish list, that topped His Excellency's list, which is the stimulus package. A recovery can only be feasible if there is a stimulus package. And as businessmen, we feel almost guilty to ask the government for a stimulus package at a time when we understand the serial deficit budget that we've been running. And with the fiscal challenges that we have, the only way for government to be able to fund any kind of stimulus to drive recovery in the economy, it will be to unlock cash that has been locked over the years in assets that the government owns and operates. So the government has to divest from those assets and unlock cash back into the economy to stimulate the economy, and maybe lease it back and operate it if they wish to continue to operate, especially for the essential services. However, we have to go the whole mile for the services that are not basic essential services that are linked to socioeconomic limitations. We can completely divest and allow the private sector to operate those services at maybe more efficient delivery mechanism, and allow the assets to be monetized by the government to feed into the stimulus package. I think this is the only way forward.
Great. Your Excellency, I think you have a long list that you need to take to the government now, because you've got a lot of recommendations, and Mr. Fancy has put the onus on you also, saying you are the best person to do it. So you can't get out of this now.
We have a whole board members of the chamber.
Yes, please.
If I may add one last point, just to complement Dr. Amar's point that has been really positioned beautifully here regarding the government asset and how we can actually privatize it and monetize it. I think there was a plan, and that plan did not get executed yet for some reason. I think it's time now to start looking at those government assets and shift them to privatize them. That's exactly what we meant by economy first strategy. A lot of these government kind of companies, once they get privatized, they will also indirectly enrich our stock market in one way or another, because there will be a lot of these shareholders who can actually benefit from this. And then the cash flow within the country itself would be more of more seamlessly circulates, if you like.
Structured, yeah.
Now, regarding the stimulus packages in the monetary and the physical systems that we had, I think I must praise the government here by saying that they were very proactive. March, they've started pushing stimulus from a minute, starting with the monetary side of the system, where a lot of these discounted rates has been provided to the banking sector in reducing their interest rates, if you like. On the physical side, we are still seeing how the government are actually sharpening the operational expenses, aggressively, and that's a good sign, without actually having to hurt. There's an unemployment rate also that we have to look very seriously into it. And I think with the recent steps that the government has taken on the physical economy side would provide a lot of space for our kids to get in and reduce the unemployment rate that the country is to some extent has been challenged.
Very valid points. Can we have a second audience question poll, please? And because I want to go into something of a larger transformation of the nature of the economy, can we have the second audience question, please? Is the corporate sector capable of taking on a leadership role in Oman's development? Is the corporate sector capable of taking on a leadership role in Oman's development? Wow, not bad. Wow, yeah. Oh, so almost. So it's a completely one-way thing. I mean, 80-90% says yes, we are capable. Okay, let me lead on to the next question from here. Oman has been a very straight-driven economy till now. Government spends and everything moves still. But now with the debt to GDP ratio being high, and there have been constraints on physical space that the government has, the government will not be in a position. Okay, so here so almost 86% say the private sector is willing and ready to take on a leadership role. Now, then private sector needs to step in now. I mean, this is a part of Vision 2040 also. Now, is the private sector capable and willing to do it, Mr. Fancy?
It most certainly is. Look, as you said, Oman, like its neighbors, is a top-down economy. Government drives expenditure. There's always been doubts about private sector's ability to truly participate in a meaningful manner. And that debate can go on and on and on, but there's no debate anymore, because at the moment, the government will have a paucity of investable revenue for quite a few years. So a material part of economic activity will need to be executed with and through the private sector and through FDI. And as I said earlier, we've got a great leader at the chamber, and that will coalesce this sector because they most definitely can. The point is to be, the key issue is going to be the type of legislation that comes through to make it happen. And I think we've discussed a lot of that, what will bring in FDI, PPP, such a huge issue. But if government go back to the old way of thinking, oh, everything just got to be a tender, then it's just a series of tenders. There's no thinking out of the box. There really needs to be that, albeit with transparency, which they want and which is absolutely necessary. But there are many ways of dealing with PPP. It's a fantastic scheme. And actually, Mayank, if you remember, you interviewed me at a time in history about 6 or 8 months ago. And you said, why are you selling Topaz and how do you feel about that deal? So forget about that. But I will give you an update on my answer. If I was feeling okay then.
No, let me bring you in, let you hold it. At that time, you were feeling very despondent and, very bit depressed, saying that man proposes, Allah disposes, and probably things didn't work out. Now, how do you look back at the Topaz sale now?
No, so I think you're exaggerating the despondent. I was happy, but I had a reason why we sold. The reason why we sold, and I told you that clearly, and I also said that in the keynote speech for your AWA award, was that basically Dukum had started really firing for us. PPP was coming in, and we wanted to bring the money home. And that's what we did. We deleveraged our balance sheet. And I think there's no government minister involved in this part of privatization, etc., who doesn't know that Renaissance would have the capacity of 100 or 200 million real to invest in the economy. But it's not easy to do it because legislation is both slow and a bit archaic to actually make it happen quickly. And that's what's got to change.
Sure. Mr. Nabil, good to see you back. If you want to add anything, you were making some points when we lost you, saying that if you have a wish list. Secondly, if the private sector, can the private sector take on a bigger role in Oman's economy? Okay, Dr. Awaz, I mean, how does the private sector take on a bigger role from here?
Yeah, it's through basically executing the PPP plans. We've had PPP plans for many years, but I think the willingness now is more than ever. And also with the Vision 2040 that we as citizens are very proud of, actually stipulates that PPP is the way forward. So we have a number of major sectors that could go into private sector. Some of them would require technology transfer, knowledge transfer, so FDI. But FDI should not go directly to the government. The government, instead of dealing directly with the international players for FDI, they should allow the private sector to basically be the co-investor, because it's good to have co-investments and it's good to have some of that money that will be generated by the local economy to stay in the country, because for many years we suffered from expatriation of money, and that affects our foreign currency base. So what we need to do is to enable the private sector to come into all those planned sectors for PPP, along with international principles if required, so that the money stays in the country, with a view to make them go listed after a while, so that the wealth is distributed. But the problem is around the whole world have suffered from concentration of wealth at the top. With businesses or government, wealth needs to be distributed down, and the only way is to go PPP followed by an IPO at some stage, so that the wealth is distributed across the nation's segments.
Sure. Mr. Nabil?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so the of course the private sector has a huge role to play in all this economic development, but the reforms, the transformation, again back to the question of transformation, that is very important for the private sector to move forward, along with hand in hand, of course, with the government new reforms and new regulations. I think we will be able to move forward in a better way. There are huge opportunities that are out there. We have to go beyond oil. We have to go beyond oil and gas, and the world is open to everyone now. It is no longer your local economy. Every single person in the country can go internationally, globally, and benefit from that.
Sure. I'm opening the floors. You have almost or more than 100 questions which have come in, and I'm opening the floors. And any one of you can go. Yeah, please.
Can I ask a question, Mayank?
A quick, Alpana, fast.
Yeah, very quick. So this is a question for His Excellency Cares. I want to know, how do you boost demand for products and services? The retail sector has been so badly hit. People are not buying cars, clothes, or any accessories, etc., other than groceries. So till that activity gets back to normal, there will be no liquidity in the market. And the sentiments are so badly affected because of your job loss, your pay cards, etc. How do you expect people to start spending again?
Yeah, so on one hand, it is an issue. So on one hand, I think the digital transformation and having the online platforms and supporting companies to go online, that on one hand allows companies to sell their products online. What does this mean? Like the business owners, there are people who will buy this service. So when businesses open, when the online service is available, the money in circulation will increase. You have heard the announcement about people that there are some retirements happening in the government to allow new people to come. Now, what does this mean? New people entering, new salaries, new money in the economy again being circulated. So again, with this boost, the people who have worked for so long in their work, and we value their work, and of course in their, whether in our companies or this, but people have their savings and that, so new people will come, and this will be another stimulus. The third stimulus is of course through what we were mentioning, through emergency loans. If these loans can be provided, some extension to the loans that are coming at the moment. I know there's a big burden on the banking system, but we all have to take this burden because at the benefit would be for the economy at large. Fourth, there are some initiatives that we hope that the government can look at, is allowing people who have been living in Oman for more than 10 years, 12 years, 5 years, who want to keep Oman as a permanent residency. Why not? Why not welcome? Oman is very welcoming and tolerant society, and for people who've been living here, they've seen it and witnessed that. How can we make it easier for people to live here and benefit? And this will again increase the money in circulation and make things easier. These are some of the solutions, of course, at a very high level.
Sure. Especially the last, really good. Yeah.
I hope your question has been answered, Alpana. There's a question from Mr. Rashad Al Musafir. I think he's the CEO of Oman Arab Bank. What initiatives are in place to provide additional business pipeline and liquidity in the market, or initiatives that allow companies to reduce overheads and costs as opposed to deterring costs? I'll read it again. What initiatives are in place to provide additional business pipeline and liquidity in the market? So what is being done to provide liquidity and in the market, or initiatives that allow companies to reduce overheads and costs as opposed to deterring costs? Dr. Abbas?
Yeah, I think I covered that when I talked about unlocking cash from the government point of view by divesting from assets and leasing them back. That will allow the government to have enough cash to put back into the economy and perhaps go with the pipeline of projects. As you know, in the last 50 years, the government has been on a mode of a development mode. I think we got stuck in that development mode for a long time, the building the nation, so to speak. But that took too long. That's 50 years of building the nation. So a lot of our projects were developmental. We need to move into wealth generating projects. So if the government is able to unlock cash from those assets, they would be able to trigger some of those already planned wealth generating projects that will stimulate the economy going forward. And that should add some cash into the circulating into the economy. The main thing is for us to also emphasize further ICV in order to keep the cash in country, so it continues to be circulating in country. So there are a number of mechanisms that can be taken to keep the money in country.
Anyone else wants to take that?
Yes, I'd like to just add another stimulus package or catalyst will be really a combination of looking at the key projects that were already driving the economy. We're not done with that. So Salalah, Dukum, Sohar, tourism, ports and logistics, etc. So that's something that the government can focus on, and the PPP part of it is huge because that's what's the symbiotic relationship. And in PPP, so for example, sorry, I'm speaking about our own company, but if we built Dukum, then we spent $200 and some million in the building, but construction companies got the contracts, someone got contracts for windows, doors. A lot of it was generated locally and the money got spent locally. That's the new project pipeline. Let's stop thinking government and start thinking how we'll do it together as private sector. And in the end, if you actually look at it, the revenue portion of what Renaissance gets is a very small piece relative to what went into the economy. So that will be with every PPP project, which many other private companies will get, and that will stimulate the pipeline.
Sure. There's a question from Mr. Ali Hassan Suleiman, and there are two questions. One for His Excellency Cass is asked that how can the private sector through OCCI be able to pass their concerns to decision makers? I think you already answered that. It's through you, they can reach out to you. The other thing he's asking is few of the recent decisions taken by the authorities will have a negative impact on the economy. and might impact the confidence of foreign investors. Can you please give your opinion on that? Certain measures will have a negative impact on economy and on a confidence of foreign investors.
Yes, I'm not sure which of those is meant by Abu Hussam. I think that's Ali Hassan Suleiman, Abu Suleiman.
Yes,
but I will answer in more general terms. Yes, the situation is difficult. This is the reality. I mean, we don't want to sugarcoat. The reality is tough, and we have to. But today's attitude is amazing way to start handling it. People are positive, and that's what we need first. And people are collaborative. That's what we need second. I think Oman is well positioned to come out of this stronger, as we have seen. What I meant was, first test is resilience. Can you survive? Yes, we have, and I think we have passed that resilience in a very proud way. That was fantastic. Can businesses survive? We have survived. So this was also good. About investor confidence, I think with the new projects that we have mentioned by my dear friends and colleagues in the panel, with the new projects, I have with the PPP projects, we announced the privatization project that will be announced. I know that there will be some projects be fast track, but we don't have the answers to everything. I think if we have people around here today from, as you mentioned, from different parts of the world, they are potential investors, already investors in Oman. What do you need from us to make you come to Oman? Oman is ready. Oman is open for business. How can we, as a chamber or ITRA, and convince you to come? Because the returns here are also good. There are many things which are going for us, the talent pool, and so many. I don't have time to mention all that. But I think one thing to benefit from these webinars is to allow even our friends from outside Oman is to talk to us, whether directly or through you. Tell us, what do they require more, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, sure.
Try our best, at least.
That's a very realistic picture that you've given us. There's a question for Dr. Abbas, and I'm opening it to everyone because a lot of discussions from Mr. Faris Abdullah Al-Kharousi of PDO. He says, I'm asking this in a personal capacity, not as an employee of PDO, saying that if we go about privatization, then does that run the risk of creating monopolies? And once you have these monopolies, you can go back to the government and start bargaining for better terms. So how do you balance these two? Dr. Abbas?
You normally would balance this through the regulatory framework. This is an experience that the world has gone through, and we can learn from the rest of the world experience and build a resilient regulatory framework that will cover for such monopolistic behavior. But we've also created a whole new government authority that is gonna manage the antitrust and fair competition. But we need to also enable the media and the NGOs to come in on the longer term. But to start with, we need to have a resilient regulatory framework. I do agree with Faris that this may invite monopolistic behavior, which is, in the capitalist world, this happens. But you can introduce a resilient regulatory framework and reinforce it through the measures that could be taken by the authority for fair competition, but also NGOs as well as media.
There are a lot of questions on digital, and I want both Mr. Maqbool and Mr. Nabil to go for it. Now, everyone has to move into the digital space, build online models. How does an individual and company go about this? A lot of people want to know, what is the roadmap? Yeah, Mr.
I think
Maqbool,
if I start, basically, Alhamdulillah, Oman today has established a very vital component within the chain of basically the infrastructure, the telecom infrastructure. So, and with that, I mean the data center businesses and the hosting services that these data center businesses are offering. Oman Data Park is part of this chain. And I think we are providing all kind of support with other system integrator companies, IT companies in Oman, in order to basically guide every single case study in the transformation journey, or basically in moving it to digitalizing as much as they can. So we have everything here. It's a case by case. I mean, there is no one solution that fits all problems. Every solution has to be looked at in individual. Give you a great example, and this is maybe a good response to Mr. Rashad's question on the reducing of the operation cost within the banking sector and the oil and gas. They're making great use of reducing their TCO by utilizing the hosting services and moving from CapEx into OpEx. And that's basically a great element that every CFO has to look into, because that will ease the balance sheet and the cash flow aspect of that particular corporate. So stop spending CapEx. There are some means of spending OpEx. You talk to us, and we will provide you all the necessary means to do that. And we've done it to a couple of banks. Bank Al-Izz is there on WAS, what we call workspace as a service. So Bank Al-Izz now are working remotely without having to impact the security aspect and the confidentiality aspect of their core banking solution. There are Oman Arab Bank, Bank Sahar, and others are on the way. So we've been trying to be as innovative as possible to provide the right tools for these large corporates to reduce their spending in one sense and to move from CapEx into OpEx in order to raise their cash flow.
Sure, Mr. Nabil. Sorry, just introduce Mr. Nabil, you have hands-on experience of building Nabe.com. A couple of takeaways from you, please. I think, have we lost Nabil again? Okay, there's a question from Dr. Fatin Al-Zazzali, College of Banking and Financial Services. This is a part of our questionnaire also. Basically, the pandemic has led to this whole term saying, let's not just build back, let's build back better. And so he's also saying that since the crisis is somewhat related to unsustainable practices of businesses and no consideration to ESG or SDG goals, do you think that going forward here, does this crisis prompt additional filters to be included in the future for the betterment of the society as a whole? So now can we see more stakeholder businesses changing the way they operate by bringing in more, not just shareholder returns, but stakeholder participation? Is that going to happen? I want everyone to comment on it. And if you could start with His Excellency.
The natural answer is yes. We have seen how businesses are actually stood up, and we have seen how businesses at the moment, if you talk about larger stakeholders, when the crisis came, many companies have contributed to the fund and to support from their corporate and social responsibility. We have created even a corporate socialist responsibility fund, which we hope that it will be managed in a different way. I was telling Dr. Amr about it and how to make it even more for the whole private sector to align larger sort of national level initiatives while giving credits to the companies that manage. So rather than doing these at the individual company level, that how can we do it collectively as a private sector, putting our funds together, working together to manage larger stakeholder expectation, which is the society. Because at the end of the day, we have to all be very close to our societies and work with them. Shareholders' returns will remain important, but I think it is more of acknowledging and making it as a goal in our matrix of how to work with the larger and wider stakeholders.
Mr. Nabil, we're going back to the old question, and then you can answer both of them. How do you build a digital model, and our business is going to become more responsible from here?
In terms of the online business,
yes,
you're asking?
Yes, that's right.
So the thing is, because it is a global village now, every person at the individual level, I'm not talking about the company level now, every person can be a business in its own, as an individual. And the reach is huge. It's a massive reach. You can literally convert your home business into a global business. So there are immense opportunities in sense of going online and creating your own business. For corporations and companies, it's a different story there. The need for the going online or transforming your businesses, it's all you need to dissect your business. There are a lot of industries that will be vanished, and we've seen a lot of industries that vanished. And because they did not think that there's a threat or there's any problem with their product or their industry or their business model, the processes, the delivery. Sometimes there's no problem with the with the product. The product is fantastic. Everybody will continue buying that product for the next 20 years. However, the delivery was wrong. There was never the business of books, for example. Still people are reading books, but why bookstores are going out of business is because exactly the model has changed. The delivery has changed. People no longer go to bookstores. They can order from online from anywhere. So thinking of all these different realities will make you change your business model. And if you change your business model, this is where you will start having the need to acquire probably these new startups that are coming up, where they find no one is looking, it's like there's no market for them to be acquired because there's no need at the corporate level, at the mainstream business level, there's no need from that side to acquire these businesses, and which makes the financing, the venture capitalists reluctant to invest in these startups. A problem that we're having in Oman because of these, the venture capitalists and private equity companies are reluctant to invest in them.
Yeah, sorry to cut you short. And we really need to wrap up because the producers are saying that it's time. And so both these questions are intertwined, saying that are we going to see more socially responsible businesses? So what has been, when you look around, what have been your key takeaways and learnings from the recent COVID-19 experience that I would like to share with everyone and the world? And let's start with Mr. Fancy.
What you mean, just as a personal
view? And even from a business point of view, yeah, but more personal. Yeah,
okay. More personal. On a personal basis, at the start of this crisis, I was just thinking about it one morning, and I'm saying it's just a virus, it'll pass, a vaccine will come. Yet it brought us to our knees like nothing else in living memory. And I realized we've abused our environment. We left behind those less fortunate. In the process, we forgot how to share or grow together. It's an amazing pause for us all. And in this pause, we are learning about sharing again, caring again, helping, innovating naturally in an environment that is beginning to look and feel and even smell better.
Sure, great.
Do we really need the old normal back? Why don't we treat this moment as a portal, a gateway to a new world, where we have a choice to leave behind our luggage, prejudices, failed ideas, bad habits, and in its stead start again with mutual trust, hope, and belief in a better way of life. People, planet, and profits were never mutually exclusive. They are mutually beneficial. They are complementary. They are interdependent. And we will need to fight for all this and not forget these moments when the stress abates.
Sure. Dr. Abbas?
Yeah, I think what we realized through companies that I'm associated with from the boards, as well as the clients that I work with, is that we've got ourselves into this illusion of safety and sustainability. And this has rocked our world in a way, because many companies in Oman and in the region have really structured themselves around complexity. And they were getting more and more complex over the years. And when you have something like this, complexity makes it very difficult to move. So they need to structure themselves around agility to allow themselves to snap out in such crisis. On the question of the CSR, the corporate social responsibility, I referred to one of my favorite books called Who Cares Wins. And I think now businesses will realize that to win back, and this is a winning back the hearts and minds of their stakeholders, be it the staff, the consumers, or the society at large, they would need to care about all the stakeholders, including the environment. Because in the past, according to the book, the environment and the society was not able to punish us for not caring. Now they are able to punish us. And in the past, the only way was to go to legislation. Now they can just rate you down online, and that will devastate your business. So the move into technology, the move into the online, combined by the competition and the choices, allowed people to hit back through the rating online. And I think businesses will be a lot more conscious and caring about their customers and employees and society at large.
So, Mr. Makbul, your key takeaways?
Sure. Basically, from a government perspective, my message here is that we are still in phase one, and in this phase, the government would really need to continue its efforts on pushing more stimulus. They've done great. I'm not saying no, but then I think we need to do more, especially on the consumer space aspect, because you're going to open up, but would consumers be very much in the mood of spending? The answer might not be yes, because consumers are very much afraid. They are still maintaining their social distancing from a safety health perspective. But then there is the cash flow aspect that every consumer are basically holding tight to, because they don't know the future, what's going to happen in the near future. So we need some stimulus to be directed towards consumers through monetary systems and physical systems, by allowing maybe the banking sector, for instance, to be very much generous in providing more loans, and delay or reschedule some of the loans they have, and so on and so forth. So that is one aspect. The second aspect that the government need to actually focus on is the economy first strategy, where we need to we have the engines. The good news is that they're on board. We have 4 engines being identified on the fourth in this 2040 vision, starting from logistics. We're doing good. We need to keep up with that. We need to push more business, and basically
Sure. You need to close
provide. We need more ecosystem around it, not only those big corporates, but then those big corporates have to start looking at creating SMEs around them and ventures around them, so that we have also we create business bottom up, if you like. And from the private sector, my message here to the private sector is really pay great attention to your balance sheet, to the cash flow, and to the capital allocation, and spend less, go OPEX, hold on into your CAPEX as much as you can for a while, until you get away, around this pandemic, which is really unprecedented for everybody. I think we're going to be fine.
Oh, great. Ms. Nabil?
I think in terms of the government has done an amazing job in terms of handling this crisis, this situation, from the health and medical point of view, and from the financial and economic point of view. I think it's a very, very good initiative from the government to start this dialogue with the businessman, and having these committees, and talking to the businessmen and listening to their views, which is very encouraging, and which is the way forward for the government to continue in this manner. In terms of the private sector, I think they should continue. This was, as I said earlier, this was a simulation for you for 3 months to see what's going to happen to you in future if you don't change. Change is vital for this economy. And it is happening globally. So we have to change to continue in progress and all else.
Thanks. Your Excellency, we started with you. We want to end with you. Your key learnings, your takeaways, your last words.
Okay. With COVID, I think on a personal level, I learned to keep extra masks in all my car and close to my door. That's one thing I learned. In terms of family, I learned, of course, it was a good time to spend in the lockdown with the family. I enjoyed them. A couple of years, I had really busy schedule, so it was good time. I still miss my friends. We try to meet on Zoom from time to time, but nothing like, you really miss that energy of meeting people, and that even the little joys of that have, I really hope that they come back. In terms of business, I think the 5 messages I leave with are key takeaways as in topic or titles is importance of business resilience and agility. That's number 1. Importance of being innovative and 4 IR readiness. 3, new word which is coming up now is the gig economy, freelancers, and how can we use them more. Four is the shared economy and about how insourcing versus outsourcing, like was mentioned today. And fifth is the digital transformation, which is now a new reality. Thank you.
Wonderful. I was supposed to do a summation, but you have done it so well that I don't think I'm going to try. So that brings us to today's webinar. Our heartfelt gratitude to His Excellency Kaisal Yusuf, Mr. Samir Fancy, Dr. Amir Al Rawas, Mr. Nabil Sultan, and Mr. Maqbool Al Wahabi for sharing their incisive insights. All of you have been just superlative. I would also like to thank our partners, Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and our sponsors, Oman Data Park, Oman Arab Bank, Octal, and National Life and General Insurance for their support. And finally, a big thanks to all our viewers for watching today's webinar. Today's webinar is live on YouTube, and it will also be uploaded on Business Live ME for the benefit of viewers who might have missed it, or if you want to watch it all over again. Take care and stay safe.